The gunshot didn't come from outside. It came from the silence itself. Kang Tae-shin sat motionless at his table, watching the waiter's hands tremble as he poured wine. The man's fear wasn't about bad service. It was about the 3 bodies that had been removed from this same restaurant 2 weeks prior, men who'd thought themselves untouchable until they'd insulted the wrong person. Tae-shin hadn't raised his voice then either. He never did. In Vermilion Heights, silence from Kang Tae-shin meant someone was already dead. They just didn't know it yet. Across from him, Seo Min-jae examined her engagement ring with the detached interest of someone appraising a business asset, which, in every way that mattered, it was. Their wedding wasn't about love. It was about consolidating her father's political machine with Tae-shin's underground empire. Chairman Han controlled politicians. Tae-shin controlled everything those politicians pretended didn't exist. "The ceremony will be at the Grand Lotus," Min-jae said, her voice carrying the mechanical precision of someone reading quarterly earnings. "Father insists on 700 guests minimum. The optics matter more than the event itself." Tae-shin nodded, his attention fracturing in a way that hadn't happened in 5 years. Something felt wrong. Not the obvious wrong of rival families planning moves or federal investigators closing in. This was different, personal, ancient. Then she walked in. Lena Brooks moved through the restaurant entrance like a ghost materializing from memory, and every carefully constructed wall Tae-shin had built around his past began to crack. She wore simple clothes, nothing that would draw attention in a place where women draped themselves in diamonds that cost more than houses. Her hair was shorter now, pulled back practically. But her eyes, those impossible green eyes that had once looked at him like he could be saved, were exactly as he remembered. Behind her, 3 children followed in a careful line. Tae-shin's wine glass paused halfway to his lips. The restaurant noise faded to white static. The children were 5 years old, maybe 6. Triplets, 2 boys and a girl. And they all had his face. Not resemblance, not similarity. His actual face, translated through childhood and combined with Lena's features. The first boy had Tae-shin's sharp, analytical eyes and Lena's auburn hair. The second had Tae-shin's bone structure softened by Lena's gentler lines. The girl had inherited the most dangerous combination, Tae-shin's intensity and Lena's fearlessness, visible even from across the room in the way she scanned the restaurant like a tiny general assessing territory. "Tae-shin?" Min-jae's voice cut through his paralysis. "What's wrong?" Everything. Nothing. The entire architecture of his carefully controlled life was collapsing in real time, and he couldn't even explain why. 5 years ago, Lena had vanished from his life without explanation. They'd been together for 8 months, the longest relationship Tae-shin had ever maintained. She'd known what he was, what he did, and for reasons he'd never fully understood, she hadn't run. She'd looked at the monster and seen something worth staying for, until she didn't. Until one morning he'd woken up and she was gone, her apartment cleared out, her phone disconnected, every trace of her existence scrubbed from his world as thoroughly as he'd scrubbed away his enemies. He'd searched, of course he'd searched. Kang Tae-shin had resources that could find anyone, anywhere. But Lena had vanished so completely that even his best intelligence networks had found nothing. Eventually, he'd been forced to accept a truth he'd never encountered before. Someone had escaped him by choice, not by death. Now she was here, in his restaurant, with 3 children who had his eyes. The math was simple and devastating. She'd left while pregnant. She'd known and had chosen to raise them alone, rather than let them grow up in his world. The realization hit him with more force than any bullet ever had. His children. He had children, 3 of them. And they'd existed for 5 years without him knowing they drew breath. Lena's eyes met his across the room. No smile, no acknowledgement, just a steady, measured gaze that communicated a single message. "I know you see them. Don't make a scene. I need to handle something," Tae-shin said, standing abruptly. Min-jae's hand caught his wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Business or personal, does it matter? To father, yes. To me, yes. We have an agreement, Tae-shin. I don't care what you do or who you do it with, but nothing jeopardizes what we're building." Her eyes flickered toward Lena and the children, assessing and cataloging. Min-jae was many things, but stupid wasn't one of them. Who is she? Someone from before. Before means nothing. Before is dead. Min-jae released his wrist. Handle it quickly. We have the venue walkthrough tomorrow, and Father expects both of us present and focused. Tae-shin moved through the restaurant with controlled precision. His bodyguards, positioned strategically throughout the space, tensed immediately. Victor Hale, his second-in-command, appeared at his elbow within seconds. Problem? Victor's hand rested near his concealed weapon. Stand down. No threat. Boss those kids. I said stand down. Tae-shin approached Lena's table carefully, aware that every eye in the restaurant was tracking his movement. In his world, everything meant something. Every gesture communicated power dynamics. Approaching someone personally, without intermediaries, suggested either great respect or imminent violence. Lena looked up as he stopped beside her table. The children continued studying their menus with the intense focus of people trying very hard to pretend adults weren't having tense conversations above their heads. Lena. Tae-shin. Her voice was steady, professional, like they were acquaintances running into each other at a grocery store. Fancy place. We're just here for my sister's birthday dinner. She works in the building. A lie, smoothly delivered. There was no sister. Lena was an only child. He'd known everything about her once. This was intentional. She'd come here knowing he'd be present. But why? After 5 years of absolute silence, why surface now? We should talk, he said quietly. Should we? Lena glanced at the children. I don't think this is the time or place. Then when? Where? One of the boys, the one with the analytical eyes, looked up from his menu. Mom, who's this? Noah. The name came to Tae-shin from nowhere and everywhere at once, like his subconscious had been cataloging information without his conscious mind registering it. This was Noah, the observer, the thinker. Lena's hand settled protectively on Noah's shoulder. Just someone I used to know, sweetheart. No one important. The words landed like a blade between ribs. No one important. He'd ruled half the city. He'd built an empire on fear and precision. He'd made people disappear with a gesture and moved millions with a phone call. And to his own son, he was no one important. Tomorrow, Lena said, her voice low enough that only Tae-shin could hear. Riverside Commons, the North Playground. 2 o'clock. Come alone. No guards, no guns, no threats. Or we disappear again, and this time, you'll never find us. She could do it too. She'd already proven that once. Whatever method she'd used to vanish 5 years ago, she could replicate it. And this time, she'd take his children with her into that void. I'll be there, Tae-shin said. He returned to his table, every step feeling like walking underwater. Min-jae was on her phone, already typing rapidly. She didn't look up as he sat down. I've informed Father that you had a personal situation arise. He's running background on the woman now. Should have preliminary information within the hour. She set her phone down, her expression perfectly neutral. I assume those are your children. Yes, and you didn't know. No. Min-jae nodded slowly, processing this information with the same calculating precision she applied to political strategy. This complicates things. Father won't tolerate loose ends, especially not ones that could be used as leverage. Children are weaknesses, Tae-shin. They're vulnerabilities that enemies exploit. They're my children. Exactly. Which makes them everyone's opportunity. Min-jae leaned forward, her voice dropping. Do you know what happened to Governor Chen's daughter? The one who made headlines 3 years ago for the kidnapping? Tae-shin did. Everyone in their world did. It had been a message killing, brutal and public. Chen had a son too, Min-jae continued. No one knows where he is now. Chen made him disappear completely, erased every record of his existence, to keep him safe from the same fate. That's what love looks like in our world, Tae-shin. It looks like absence. The next day, Tae-shin arrived at Riverside Commons 40 minutes early. The park was deliberately public, filled with families and joggers and the comfortable chaos of normal life. It was the opposite of everywhere Tae-shin normally existed. He'd come alone as requested, though he knew Victor had positioned surveillance teams at 3 separate vantage points. Not close enough to interfere, but close enough to respond if things went wrong. Tae-shin found a bench with clear sightlines and waited. The sun was warm. Children played on elaborate playground equipment. Dogs chased frisbees. Somewhere, someone was grilling food, the smell of charcoal and meat drifting through the air. It was aggressively, almost offensively normal. Lena arrived exactly at 2 o'clock, the children trailing behind her like ducklings. They'd spotted the playground immediately, their faces lighting up with uncomplicated joy. "Can we?" the girl asked, already moving toward the equipment. "Stay where I can see you, Mira," Lena said, "and keep your brothers close. Mira, the fearless one." She was already running, the boys following with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Noah headed for the climbing structure with methodical determination. Eli, the quieter one, gravitated toward a sandbox where another child was building elaborate castles. Lena sat beside Tae-shin on the bench, maintaining careful distance. For several minutes, neither spoke. They just watched the children play, existing in parallel silence. "They're beautiful," Tae-shin said finally. "They're everything." Lena's voice carried an edge of steel wrapped in softness. "They're smart, kind, funny, curious about the world. They believe people are generally good. They think problems can be solved with conversations and compromises." She turned to look at him directly. "And I will burn down anything that tries to teach them otherwise. Is that why you left? Without a word? Without giving me a choice?" "You never had a choice, Tae-shin. We didn't have a choice. The moment I realized I was pregnant, I knew exactly what my options were. Raise them in your world where they'd grow up watching violence normalized and fear weaponized, where their childhood would be security details and safe rooms and learning which adults might betray their father." Lena's hands clenched in her lap. "Or leave, give them something normal, something safe. You could have told me. Could I? Really?" Lena's laugh was bitter. "What would you have done? Let me walk away peacefully? Or convinced yourself you could protect us all while maintaining your empire? We both know how that story ends. It ends with leveraged children. It ends with kidnappings and ransoms and messages sent through violence." Tae-shin wanted to argue, wanted to insist she was wrong, but Min-jae's words from the previous night echoed too loudly. Children are weaknesses, they're vulnerabilities that enemies exploit. "Why come back now?" he asked. "I didn't come back. We never left the city. I've been here the entire time, working as a pediatric nurse, living in a small apartment in Riverside District, sending them to public school." Lena gestured toward the restaurant visible in the far distance, its top floors glittering in sunlight. "Last night was Mira's idea. She's been asking questions about her father, about why she doesn't have one when her friends do. I don't know what I thought. That seeing you from a distance might give me clarity on whether you'd changed, whether your world had changed, and you're engaged to a political dynasty's daughter. You still have bodyguards positioned around this park right now. Don't try to deny it. You still move through spaces like you own them." Lena's voice softened slightly. "You're still the same man I loved and left, which means my children still can't be part of your life." On the playground, Mira had organized several children into some kind of elaborate game involving the climbing structure and complex rules only she seemed to understand. She was directing movements with confident authority, a tiny general commanding her troops. Noah watched from a distance, analyzing patterns. Eli was helping another child fix a collapsed sandcastle, his focus absolute and gentle. "What if I left?" The words came out before Tae-shin had consciously decided to speak them. "What if I walked away from all of it?" Lena stared at him. "People like you don't walk away. There's no retirement plan, no exit strategy. You know too much. You've done too much. The moment you show weakness, everything you've built turns on you. People like me," Tae-shin repeated slowly. "You mean criminals, monsters. I mean survivors who learned the wrong lessons about power." Lena's hand reached out, stopped inches from his arm, then retreated. "I loved you, Tae-shin. Part of me still does. But I love my children more, and I won't sacrifice their safety for any relationship, including with their father. Let me see them. Limited basis. Controlled circumstances. I won't bring my world into theirs. Your world isn't something you bring in. It's something you are. You can't take it off like a jacket." Mira's laugh carried across the playground, bright and uncomplicated. She'd reached the top of the climbing structure and was waving triumphantly. Noah applauded from below with restrained approval. Eli had moved on to helping another child, his natural empathy drawing other kids to him like gravity. Tae-shin felt something crack in his chest. These were his children, his blood, his DNA walking around in tiny bodies with Lena's smile in his eyes. They existed in the world completely unaware that their father controlled a significant portion of the city's underground economy. They were innocent, in ways he'd forgotten people could be. "Once a month," Lena said finally, her voice barely audible. "Supervised, public places only. You come alone, you act like a normal person. And the second I sense any danger, any hint of your world touching theirs, we disappear. Permanently." "Agreed." They sat in silence for another hour, watching the children play. Eventually, Lena called them over. They approached cautiously, these three small strangers who carried his genetic code and none of his history. "Kids, this is Tae-shin. He's an old friend. He'd like to get to know you better, if that's okay." Noah studied Tae-shin with unsettling intensity. "Mom says we should be careful around strangers. Your mom is very smart. Are you dangerous?" Mira asked with the directness only children possessed. Tae-shin paused. In his world, the answer was absolutely yes. He was one of the most dangerous men in the city. But looking at these three small faces, so open and curious and trusting because their mother trusted, he realized the answer they needed was different than the truth. "I try not to be," he said finally. Eli, who'd been silent until now, smiled slightly. "That's a good answer. Trying is important." The walk back to Lena's car felt surreal. The children chattered about playground politics and sandbox architecture and the injustice of bedtimes. Normal concerns, beautiful, ordinary concerns. They invited him to their upcoming birthday party with the casual assumption that of course he'd want to attend, why wouldn't he? Tae-shin agreed to everything. He'd learn their favorite foods, their interests, their dreams. He'd show up and be normal and pretend he wasn't calculating security risks with every street they crossed. That evening, Chairman Han summoned him. The chairman's private office occupied the top floor of a building that officially housed a consulting firm and unofficially housed the coordination center for half the city's corruption. Han sat behind a desk that cost more than most people's cars, his expression carved from granite. "Sit," Tae-shin sat. Min Jae was already present, standing near the window like a sentinel. "I've reviewed the intelligence on Lena Brooks," Chairman Han said, sliding a folder across the desk. "Pediatric nurse. Clean record. No criminal associations except you. 3 children born 5 years ago. DNA testing confirms paternity with 99.9% certainty. I didn't request DNA testing. I don't care what you requested. I care about protecting my interests. Our upcoming alliance represents decades of planning. Your marriage to my daughter consolidates power in ways that reshape this city's entire structure." Han leaned forward. "And now you have 3 vulnerabilities walking around in public schools, completely unprotected, completely exploitable. They're children. They're leverage." Han's voice was flat, stating facts without emotion. "Do you know why I only have 1 child? Why I ensured Min Jae was raised in secured facilities with rotating security teams and limited public exposure? Because you're paranoid, because I'm realistic. I had a son once, older than Min Jae by 3 years. Brilliant child, destined for great things." Han's face remained expressionless, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "When he was 7, one of my rivals kidnapped him. They sent me a finger, then an ear, then photographs of what they'd done to him over 3 days. They wanted me to surrender territory, admit defeat publicly, bow to their authority." The office was completely silent. Even Min Jae had gone still, like she'd heard this story before, but it never got easier. "I refused their terms," Han continued, "because showing weakness invites more attacks. 3 days later, they killed him. Sent me the body in a box with a note, 'Kings who love their children make poor kings.'" Han stood, walking to the window. "I had every member of that organization killed, their families, their associates, their distant cousins. I erased that organization so thoroughly that historians debate whether it ever existed. But it didn't bring my son back." I'm sorry, Tae-shin said quietly. Don't be sorry. Learn. In our world, love is the most dangerous weakness. Those children are targets from the moment anyone knows they exist. My enemies, your enemies, our future enemies. Everyone who wants leverage against the power we're building. Han turned back to face him. You have two choices. Cut them out completely. Act like they don't exist. Or every alliance we've built, every plan we've made, becomes compromised. Tae-shin looked at Min-jae. She met his gaze steadily. I told you, she said softly. Love looks like absence in our world, and if I refuse, then we have a problem, Chairman Han said. Because I won't allow vulnerabilities to compromise my daughter's future. If you can't secure those children properly or remove them as factors, I'll handle it myself. Cleanly, professionally. They'll simply disappear. The threat wasn't implied. It was explicit. Crystal clear. Chairman Han would kill Tae-shin's children to protect his political empire. Tae-shin stood slowly. If you touch them, everything you've built ends. Not eventually, not strategically, immediately. I'll burn it all down. You'd destroy yourself. Absolutely. Tae-shin's voice was perfectly calm. I've spent 15 years building my empire. I can spend 15 minutes ending yours. Test me. For a long moment, Chairman Han studied him. Then he smiled, and it was the coldest expression Tae-shin had ever seen. You're already making choices, Han said. Those children are already changing you. This is exactly the weakness I warned about. He returned to his desk, dismissing Tae-shin with a gesture. You have 1 week to decide. Marry my daughter and abandon those children, or lose everything you've built, including your life. The wedding was scheduled for 3 weeks. The venue was booked. Invitations had been sent to 700 of the city's most powerful and corrupt individuals. Alliances had been promised. Deals had been structured. The wedding wasn't just a ceremony. It was a reorganization of the city's entire power structure, and Tae-shin was going to burn it all. He spent 2 days making calls. Quiet conversations with people who owed him favors or feared him sufficiently. Victor helped coordinate, asking no questions but understanding everything. This is suicide, Victor said finally, reviewing the plan. You're dismantling everything we built. The moment Han realizes what you're doing, he'll retaliate. I know. Those kids better be worth it. They are. The plan was simple in concept, catastrophic in execution. Tae-shin had spent 15 years building networks of loyalty through fear and reward. Now he'd spend 1 week destroying those same networks from within. Leak critical information to federal investigators, trigger internal conflicts between allied organizations, collapse financial structures that connected everything together, make himself radioactive to every power player in the city. By the time Chairman Han realized what was happening, Tae-shin's empire would be rubble, and Han's political machine would be so compromised by association that survival would require distancing himself completely from their planned alliance. The engagement announcement's retraction hit media outlets on a Friday evening. By Saturday morning, federal raids were hitting 3 organizations connected to Han's network. By Sunday, internal warfare had erupted between groups that had previously cooperated under Tae-shin's coordination. Min-jae called him once. You chose them, she said. Not angry, just stating facts. Yes, Father will kill you for this. You know that. He'll try. I actually hoped you'd choose power. It would have made things simpler. Min-jae paused. But I understand. If I had something worth protecting besides ambition, maybe I'd make the same choice. Maybe. She hung up without saying goodbye. Chairman Han's response came swiftly and violently. Tae-shin's business fronts were targeted. His associates were arrested or disappeared. His safe houses were raided. But Tae-shin had spent the week moving assets, securing loyal people, and most importantly, creating distance between himself and anything that could be traced back to Lena or the children. The final conversation with Victor happened in a parking garage, both of them aware this might be the last time they spoke as free men. Extraction is ready, Victor said. New identities, clean backgrounds, small town in Oregon, teaching position arranged at a public school under your new name, bank accounts established, with enough to live comfortably but not suspiciously. You should disappear too, Tae-shin said. Already planning on it. Maybe I'll try Australia, see if criminals there are more interesting. Victor extended his hand. It's been an honor, boss. They shook hands. 15 years of partnership ending in a parking garage handshake. What's your new name? Victor asked. Daniel Brooks, high school history teacher. Victor laughed. From crime lord to teacher, that's poetry. 3 months later, Daniel Brooks walked his children to their first day at a small public school in Oregon. Mira held his right hand. Noah held his left. Eli walked slightly ahead, already making friends with another quiet child near the entrance. Lena waited by the car, watching with an expression that mixed hope and lingering skepticism. They weren't married. They were barely dating again, but they were something. Co-parents. Former lovers learning each other again in a world without violence. Any regrets? She asked when he returned after drop-off. Daniel considered the question honestly. He'd lost everything, his empire, his reputation, his power. People who'd feared him now had no idea he existed. He taught history to teenagers who thought his strictness about homework was the most authoritarian thing they'd ever experienced. His biggest daily crisis was deciding what to make for dinner. I had everything before, he said finally, watching his children disappear into the school building. Money, power, fear, control. I thought I was building something permanent. And now? Now I have 3 kids who argue about whose turn it is to pick the movie. I have a job that pays okay but not great. I drive a used car and buy groceries with coupons. He looked at Lena, and something in his chest felt lighter than it ever had in his previous life. And none of it matters. Because they're safe. They're happy. They think the world is fundamentally good because we've built a world around them that is... Lena's hand found his, their fingers interlacing carefully. Welcome home, Daniel. That evening, over dinner that was slightly burned because he was still learning to cook, Mira asked if he'd tell them a story. Not read one from a book, but tell one from his life. Something exciting, she demanded. Something with adventure. Daniel looked at these 3 faces watching him with complete trust. They didn't know who he'd been. They knew who he was now, Dad. The person who helped with homework and attended school plays and made terrible jokes at breakfast. Once upon a time, he began, there was a man who thought he needed to rule the world to matter. He built empires and commanded fear and believed power was the only thing worth having. He paused, letting the story breathe. And then one day, he met 3 people who taught him that having everything means nothing if you have no one worth having it for. So he gave it all up, walked away from kingdoms and crowns, and he learned that being ordinary with people you love is infinitely more valuable than being extraordinary alone. That's a good story, Eli said softly. Did it really happen? Every word, Daniel said, meaning it. The children finished dinner and scattered to their various evening activities, Noah to reading, Eli to drawing, Mira to building elaborate structures with blocks that defied physics. Daniel watched them, these 3 miracles he'd never known he needed. His phone buzzed once. A text from Victor, his first communication in 3 months, still alive. Australia is weird. You? Daniel typed back, still alive. Oregon is quiet, perfect. He deleted the message thread immediately. Some parts of his old life needed to stay dead. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. This story reminds us that the most powerful thing we can build isn't an empire, it's a family worth protecting. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button to see more content like this. Drop a comment telling me what you'd sacrifice for the people you love, and smash that like button if you believe redemption is possible for anyone willing to pay its price. Until next time, remember, sometimes losing everything is how you finally gain what matters most.